You find an acre for $10,000 and think, finally, a way out of that insane rent. But what if that price tells you nothing about what actually matters? Not the vibe, not the views, but whether you're legally allowed to park your RV there for longer than a month. 3 counties, 3 completely different rules on how many days you're allowed to live there, and most buying guides never mention it. Today we're putting Apache County in Arizona, Elko County in Nevada, and Luna County in New Mexico side by side, not on price, but on the rule that ultimately decides whether you can really live there. We start in Apache County, Arizona, 1 acre of desert land for around $10,000, flat, with decent access and few neighbors. Sounds like off-grid freedom, and at first glance, that's exactly what it is. No city noise, no traffic, just you, the horizon, and a sky that fills with stars at night you would never see in any city. But the county handles this in a way most listings never mention. Camping and RV use are allowed, but once you stay on that land longer than 30 days, that RV has to be hooked up to a permitted septic system. No permit, no long stay. You can show up, enjoy it, stay a weekend or a week, but the law draws a hard line at 30 days if there is no sanitary hookup. And that line applies no matter how well behaved you intended to be. A standard septic permit costs around $300. An alternative system, needed for less suitable soil, can run up to $550. On paper, that looks like small change next to a $10,000 purchase. But it is exactly the step that separates a weekend spot you occasionally drive out to from a real home you can build a life on. Without that permit, everything you do out there is temporary, no matter how much effort you put in, how much furniture you haul inside, how many solar panels you install. With that permit, the land turns from a temporary escape into a permanent base. The permit itself is not the cost to be scared of. It is the key that unlocks everything else you are planning, and skipping it means building on quicksand. And there's something else the average temperature map won't tell you. Desert regions can push toward 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and drop hard at night, sometimes dozens of degrees within a few hours, a swing that would be unthinkable in a more humid climate. The averages you find online can also come from a completely different microclimate zone than the actual parcel you are standing on. A weather station in a lower, warmer valley tells you something different than what you would feel on a higher, cooler plateau a few dozen miles away. Anyone who bases their decision on the first average they find online sometimes ends up buying a completely different climate than they thought, and only notices once the first real summer or winter hits. Then there is the well, and this is where the math gets genuinely interesting. Drilling can go hundreds of feet deep before you hit water, and the deeper it goes, the more expensive the drilling, sometimes expensive enough to outpace the price of the land itself. Without that, well, you are looking at hauling water over and over, a run with tanks every few days to the nearest fill point. And that is not a one-time cost, but a recurring one that keeps running year after year, season after season, regardless of how careful you are with usage. The price of the land by itself says nothing about these 2 line items combined, the well you might have to drill, and the water you will have to haul until then or forever. Factor both in alongside the septic permit from before, and that $10,000 bargain ends up with a very different price tag over your first few years living there. Some buyers deliberately choose a larger parcel instead of the cheapest, smallest one, precisely because the fixed costs of a well and septic system have to be paid either way, whether the parcel is 1 acre or 5. Cross the border into Nevada, and the clock starts ticking faster. In Elko County, a comparable 2-acre parcel costs a bit more than the Arizona option, but the rule that applies there is stricter and less forgiving. Without a septic hookup, your RV has to be moved every 28 days here, not 30, but 28, a difference that looks small, but in practice means you must track the calendar more closely than in Arizona. Miss that date, and you are risking a violation, even if you genuinely plan to move out the very next day. With a permitted septic system, the RV is allowed to stay, just like in Arizona, but the permit requirement is not the only hurdle you have to clear here. Not every piece of land in Elko County actually qualifies for an RV, regardless of whether you apply for a permit. The parcel has to be at least 1 acre and zoned R1 or agricultural residential. Buy land with the wrong zoning, and even the most expensive septic installation will not save you, leaving you with a parcel where you are legally not allowed to park an RV at all. With no permit and no proper zoning, you are back to square one, packing up, moving, unpacking again every 28 days, a cycle that undermines the whole idea of settled living and turns what should be a home base into a constant moving target. For anyone planning to live here permanently, the zoning on the title is just as important as the soil under your feet, and it is a check you need to make before buying, not after, because the wrong zoning is not something you can simply fix later without a long, uncertain application process with the county. The winters here are the problem people underestimate the most. It is not summer heat that eventually wrecks your RV. It is the frost that breaks poorly insulated pipes on a night when the temperature drops well below freezing, often without warning if you are not checking the forecast daily. Combine that with wind that does not let up for days at a time, sometimes 25 miles per hour or more, and you understand why experienced residents here invest in insulation and windbreaks before they even think about decoration or comfort. This is not a climate where you can just park a standard RV year-round without preparation, and anyone who tries usually learns that the hard way, in the middle of the first winter storm. The well here typically sits a bit shallower than in Arizona, which lowers drilling costs somewhat, but the cost of frost-proofing pipes and water tanks rises just as fast as those savings. It is a different kind of math than Arizona. There you mostly pay for depth. Here you mostly pay for protection against the cold, insulation material, heat tape around the pipes, and water storage that will not crack on the first hard freeze. Both counties demand investments that show up nowhere in the land's original asking price. And both investments ultimately decide whether you can live there comfortably or just barely survive until the next season catches you off guard. New Mexico flips the whole thing on its head. In Luna County, the rule isn't 28 or 30 days, it's 240 days a year, and that only applies if your RV is hooked up to water and a septic system. Without that hookup, you drop back to just 30 days, exactly like Arizona, which makes the hookup here even more critical than in the other two counties. At first glance, 240 days looks like a massive improvement over the other two counties, almost 8 months instead of a handful of weeks, and it feels like the most practical option of the three. But the county is crystal clear about another point here, and that point changes everything. An RV may never serve as a permanent residence, no matter how long you are allowed to stay, and no matter how many hookups you have arranged. 240 days sounds generous, until you realize there is always a stretch of more than 100 days a year where you officially have to be somewhere else. Every single year, no exceptions. That is not a minor footnote. It is a structural part of your annual planning if you want to live here seriously, something you have to factor into every job, every subscription, and every appointment you set up nearby. For anyone planning to park their RV and simply stay, this is the rule that can derail those plans the hardest, because it is not about whether you have a permit, it is about a hard limit that even a perfect permit does not erase. You can have everything in order, water, septic, power, and still be required to leave at some point. And here's the trick buyers in the comments under similar videos bring up themselves, the one no real estate listing will ever tell you. Don't treat those 240 days as a hard, indivisible limit, but as a pattern you can shape yourself, one long continuous stretch on your own land, followed by a short stay at a campground or with family before the clock resets for the next year. It's not a loophole that gets around the rule, it's a way to stay on your own spot for nearly the whole year within the rule, with only a brief, plannable break instead of one that catches you off guard. Some buyers take it a step further and consider buying 2 adjacent parcels with infrastructure, water, and septic on one lot, then simply moving the RV to the lot next door once the term runs out, where the same hookups are already waiting. It's not a guarantee in every situation because it depends heavily on the exact local interpretation of the rule and on how a county judges the move between 2 parcels, and that can vary from one official to the next. But it is exactly the kind of thinking that separates getting stuck in the letter of the rule from working with it smartly and legally. The rule itself is not the end of the conversation, it is the starting point for a plan. So which parcel actually wins once you stop looking at the asking price and start looking at what you're actually allowed to do? Not the parcel with the lowest price per acre, and not the parcel with the prettiest drone shot in the listing. The parcel whose rules best fit how you actually want to live, not how you hope to live on one nice summer day, but how you want to get through 12 months of the year. Want to stay in one place year-round without constantly checking the calendar? Then the septic investment in Apache or Elko is the key. Not an afterthought, but a requirement you need to plan for from day one. Want to keep some flexibility and be somewhere else now and then? Then Luna County's 240-day rhythm fits your travel style well, and you can even use those 100 days to go explore another part of the country. The purchase price, strange as it sounds for an investment of thousands of dollars, is the smallest calculation you will make here. The real math comes down to 3 things: the cost of a septic hookup, the cost and depth of a well, or the recurring cost of hauling water, and the exact number of days the law lets you stay without those hookups. Anyone who lines up these 3 factors before signing, right alongside the price per acre printed large in every listing, avoids the most expensive surprise of all: buying a piece of land you can never actually use the way you planned, no matter how cheap it looked on paper, and no matter how good the photos looked online. Don't want to get caught off guard by rules that end up costing you thousands of dollars. Subscribe now.